So the build on this guitar kit, I cannot stand sanding. I hate sanding. Painting, I'm not a big fan of either. I don't mind the paint itself, it's just the mess and the cleanup and all that. So once I decided I wanted to paint this guitar, I went to Lowe's in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I figured, well, paint department should know what they're talking about. And I had read the reviews and everything on this kit and emailed the seller, and he confirmed it was a very thin veneer, do not sand on it. It's supposed to have a lacquer sealer. This is winter time. Like, it's cold out here. I couldn't work out in the shop. And so I wanted something I could work in the house with. So water-based paint was my natural choice on that. So I went and talked to the guy. I told him what I knew about it. All I knew is it has a lacquer-based sealer on it. He didn't have anything in lacquer. Especially, he had 2 cans of lacquer, and they was something I couldn't even use. But what he did tell me, he sold me a can of Valspar stain blocking bonding sealer. He said this stuff would stick to anything. It would seal anything. Right here is the can he sold me. And I wanted to paint it black, so he sold me some Sherwin-Williams interior exterior high gloss stain resistant paint and primer. Let's see, turn that where you can see the label. There you go. That there. And a can of Minwax water-based polyacrylic protective finish. I told him I wanted something high gloss. So this is what he sold. It ended up costing me, I think, around 80 bucks. I bought some sandpaper and stuff to go along with it to do the job. This sealer went on, I noticed after sanding it down and everything, I went to the sealer as much as I could. You know, I sanded the back of the body, no problem there. Just lightly went over the thin veneer real light, so it wouldn't sand down through it. And it just didn't seem to want to go on right. It took a couple of coats and it just didn't look right to me. Well, so maybe it's just me. So I want to put the paint on after I let it dry. The recommended time, follow the directions to the can, to the letter. This stuff would not level out at all. I mean, it was brush strokes, real thick in some areas and so thin in the other areas that you could see the primer underneath. So I sanded, you know, leveled it out a little bit with sandpaper, left it on there, figured, well, maybe it needs another coat to cover. Added another coat. Still didn't cover real great. So I finally put enough coats on there. And sanding it, tried to get it smooth. And never did use the polyacrylic on it. I gave up. I said, you know, this is not working. This paint dries almost as fast as you could put it on. It does. It says fast drying on the can. It does. I mean, it would dry before it would level out. That's one reason I think it has had so many bad brush strokes on it. By this time, this had been a couple or 3 times going through here, sanding down, repainting, sanding, and adding layers and trying to get it coverage. Finally, I gave up. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go get some Rust-Oleum. So I ended up going to Walmart and bought a can of Kills. I've worked with this stuff before in a project, and it it seals it blocks stuff. Like it says blocks odors and stuff on the can. It works. I also bought a can of Rust-Oleum gloss black paint, universal. I'd never seen this before, so I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And a can of Rust-Oleum universal clear. The big mistake I made was I put it on really thick on the clear coat. You know, I got the black down. The kills went on great, no problems. You know, I sanded it down, everything as close as I could get it back to wood. And then the black covered great, no problems. Sanded it down, put the clear coat on, but I put it on way too thick, so it was still too soft in the beginning when I polished it. So I'm gonna give it it's probably fine now. I could probably go back now and give it a good polishing and everything, get it all cleaned up, which I want to do. But that was the problems I had with the paint. And it may fall off sometime or another, and I made mistakes. You know, there's some spots on it that don't look too great along the binding and the fretboard. But this is something for me, so I'll live with it. It was my first, this was an experiment anyway. So I did take and bought some copper tape so I could shield all the cavities. I shielded every cavity and crevice I could. The pickup cavities. This is where the output jack would go through, looking in. And the cavities from between the pickups and back to the control cavities. I managed to get copper foil tape all through it. I replaced the nut with a bone nut from Guitar Fetish. And you can tell the plastic nut is actually hollow, which I've learned is not good for a guitar nut. You need it to be solid. This is the real bone one. It did come with 2 sets of strings. I used one string, one set for the setup.